Guess what? I'm back again. You just can't get enough of that wonderful science. Probably because you like my videos and subscribe so you know when I post new ones, which are like Fridays, apparently. Anyway, let's talk about another idea in ecology that has to do with population growth and change. And this will kind of come back when we mention things about human impact on the environment, because human populations grow in a similar way. So let's just take a look here. Do you think populations, do you think they can just grow forever? Why or why not? Take a minute to think about that. Thinking. So no, I mean, populations can't grow forever. And why can't they grow forever? Well, what does a population of people, of animals, of plants, of mice, of whatever, what do they need? Well, they're going to need space to live. They're going to need resources, like if they're an animal, food and shelter, water. If it's a plant, they're going to need access to sunlight and nutrients and water. So living things have needs, and they're always competing with each other to meet their needs. And so you can have populations grow, and populations always, not always, but a lot of times population growth will happen in this exponential way. So this is a graph showing exponential growth. Okay, so we're looking at the population of humans from 1,000, the year 1000, to today-ish. Okay, and that's an exponential curve. So like x squared, if we were to graph x squared. So like you start with 2 and then grow to 4, and so the curve starts off pretty flat at first, and then all of a sudden, whoop, it like is going really fast because it's going to grow so quickly and double. So yeah, so maybe you kind of can get the idea like, oh yeah, we're over 7 billion people now. Maybe we can't keep growing forever because maybe there's not enough food to feed everybody, or fresh water, or space. So different countries do have different types of population growth in them. Let's just take a second to look at that before we talk more about what happens after the exponential growth phase in populations. Actually, I lied, we'll talk about that right now. So, like I said, populations will start to grow at this exponential rate. Okay, that's where you start to see here exponential growth. Then they'll reach something called carrying capacity. So carrying capacity, two things that start with C. What letter do they represent carrying capacity with? K, of course. What other letter would you think of? Anyway, so once a population reaches this thing called carrying capacity, the population growth is going to basically stop. Okay, at some point, it's going to somehow even out. So what is carrying capacity? Think about if you're carrying stuff in your arms or holding stuff. There's only so much you can hold or carry. Even if like you got like a backpack on, there's literally only so much you can physically carry before you're like, yeah, I fell over. It's just, I can't carry that. It's too much. So the carrying capacity of an environment is how much of that particular creature can that environment support. So if you're looking at something like a forest ecosystem, well, it can't support like 6 billion wolves. There's not enough squirrels and mice and things to feed them. So their carrying capacity is lower. But maybe you could support like 1 million field mice. I don't know, this is a giant forest. Because there's enough seeds and other things for them to survive, enough like little nesting areas for them to find shelter. But there's always going to be fewer as you go higher up on the food chain. We talked about that, and part of it has to do with the energy transfer from one level, from one trophic level to the next. So this carrying capacity is basically like a number of creatures that ecosystem can hold at that particular time. I think of it too like, you know how you go into a building and it'll say like max capacity, like 78 people, and you're like, there's way more than 78 people in here, I think. Uh-oh. Don't call the fire department. I think of it like that. Like, I mean, yeah, if we were in my classroom and you tried to fit more than like we have, but if you try to fit more than like 25 or 26 people in here, it's pretty cramped and crowded in here. Like maybe somebody can't see the board super well, or maybe like we have to put a desk in a place where you're like, well, once I get in, I probably shouldn't get out for a little while. Um, so it's like that in the environment, except it's not like somebody looked at the forest and was like, well, let me get my old sign up here. This area can hold no more than 800 hawks, and just posted it up there. It's based on how much like space and how much prey or nutrients are available in that particular area. So once a population, let's just say it's like carrying capacity is like 1,000. This number is not totally set, okay, also. It's kind of like an estimate. But once, like, let's just say this population of wolves or whatever hits 1,000, it doesn't mean like, okay, a new wolf is born. All right, this one just instantly dies. There's going to be some time where, like, the population is growing, 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 and maybe you have 1,200 wolves. Well, what's going to happen to them? They're going to go hungry, and some are going to die. Some of the old ones, some of the young ones. And like the strongest, the ones who are better at surviving and finding food and hunting or dealing with hunger, will survive. And then maybe it might be difficult for them to find a mate, or maybe some of the wolf pups don't survive because there's just not enough food. I know those things are sad. That's just how it is in nature. I know we think they're sad, but it's just how it is. So maybe that population will drop to like 950, okay, and then it will kind of dip a little bit, and then it'll even out right around the carrying capacity. So that's how populations change, and eventually, kind of hopefully, that's going to happen for humans on Earth. Like we're getting very close to the carrying capacity of humans on Earth. And so there's going to be a time where it starts to level out, where our population does not grow so exponentially. I think when I was your age, I think the population was only like hitting 6 billion. I gotta look it up. I don't remember. It was somewhere around there. But yeah, in my life, I'm pretty sure I've seen it hit 6 billion and 7 billion, and we're on our way to 8 billion. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. So eventually the human population is going to get here too and hit carrying capacity. And then things will level off, and hopefully like we'll be able to sustain things. These are population growth curves, I guess you could call them, or we'll just look at how they look. So a population can have rapid growth. My head's in the way, as usual. But here you have very young. This would be for humans. And on one side, okay, let me back up here. Okay, this is why I need my sweet YouTube money, so I can hire an editor so they can cut out all the garbage stuff that I do. Okay, so this is a unique graph. So you see we have a split down the middle. You could think of that like as maybe the y-axis, right? On this side, though, you have females. On this side, you have males, or you could male, female, whatever. Okay, but this is the population of males and females at this age. So this is like 0 to 4, and each box has like a 4-year increment that it's going to go up in. As you can see, countries that have really rapid growth, they have a lot of young people having many, many children, and maybe the life expectancy isn't that high necessarily. They don't have a whole lot of people living in their 70s or 80s. So this might be somewhere in like a third world country, where they don't have access to great health care. But they have rapid population growth. Here in the United States, we're kind of between these two, where we have either slow or zero growth, and these are a lot of countries in Europe too. So you have more younger people than older people. However, maybe those young people aren't having so many babies. Maybe they'll have like 2 or 3, a family of 2 or 3. So people are getting replaced. So like if you have a mom and a dad, they have to have 2 children to replace them, one to replace mom and one to replace dad. So maybe they're having families of 2 or 3 or 4. Some people are having a family of 1. So you have some growth, but it's not very, very rapid growth. And then zero growth, I think there's some European countries that are like this, where it's like, okay, well, a lot of people are having just maybe like 1 or 2 kids. And so the population stays pretty steady. They're just kind of replacing. They're not having very large families. And then when I learned this, and the last time I looked this up, Italy was the example of this, where you have negative growth, where you have a large population that's older, and the younger people who would normally be having kids are not, or they're having like 1 child. And so there's very few young people to replace all the older people. You can imagine what this graph might have looked like in China during the time where they had a 1-child policy, where you had many more males than females, and you had also slow to negative growth. And the reason why they tried to enact that 1-child policy at the time was to slow their rapid population growth, because they were quickly running out of resources and space for the people in their country. So I kind of here describe carrying capacity to you. You can read it for a second. If you want to pause me, I'll read it to you. Carrying capacity is the number of individuals in a population that an ecosystem can hold, or carry, like I told you. And it depends on how many resources are there for that particular population. And remember, a population is a group of the same species living in the same place at the same time. Oh, and what affects that the most, this is something that I studied for a long time, are limiting factors. So what's a limiting factor? Think of like a limit, okay? You can't cross it, or something like that. So a limiting factor is a resource that limits the population growth. It's kind of like what's there the least of. So like think of like a desert. What do you think of there's the least of for maybe a plant? Right, water. So in a desert ecosystem, water would be a limiting factor for plant growth. That's going to make it so that this population can't grow. Okay, all of them are kind of competing in a way to get, in a desert, water. In a forest ecosystem or a rainforest, you know what one of the limiting factors is for plant growth? Light. There's the canopy is so thick at the top of the rainforest that if a tree dies, like things really quickly grow in, and leaves and branches will kind of grow and quickly cover it. I mean, quickly for a plant, you know. So different biomes, different ecosystems have different limiting factors. Different populations have different limiting factors that affect them. And looking at that, you can kind of see what the carrying capacity is potentially going to be, or why maybe this population isn't growing here. Oops, sorry. This is another important graph. I know, did you ever think, wow, I'm going to learn about important graphs today? This is an important graph because it's kind of talking about population changes and interactions between predator and prey. So this is a predator-prey graph. You've probably seen it before. Never. Maybe you've never seen it. So what is this illustrating us? Okay, so on the y-axis we have the size of the population. On the x-axis we have over time. So you can think of this as like years. So the prey population is always going to be higher than the predator population. Well, always, usually. But take a minute and think why prey has to be more than predators. Yeah, because the predators are going to eat them. So there has to be more prey. There can't be more predators than prey. So if you look, you can see this fluctuation. The population rises and falls. Well, why is that? There's plenty of factors that affect population growth, weather, availability of food and water, and whatever. But one thing that's also going to affect prey population is the population of predators. So we also can see the same kind of up and down pattern in the predator population. Do these two lines, do they match up directly? Like, is the highest point of the predator population at the same point that's the highest population of prey? Nope. They're offset. Okay. So think of this as like, I don't know, squirrels, and this can be like owls. Okay. A lot of times they'll say this is lynx and this is hare, which is liar. Hare, the bunny, and the blue is the lynx. This is why I need an editor. Help me get that sweet YouTube money so you don't have to hear my mistakes. Okay. So prey, like a squirrel, okay, they're going to grow and have little babies and stuff and whatever. Life is great. There's tons of acorns. Well, here are some owls. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, squirrels are everywhere. I'm just going to eat and eat and eat. I'm feeling great. And the owl population starts to grow. Well, guess what happens to those squirrels that there are so many of them? Well, now there's more and more and more and more owls. And they're having a harder and harder and harder time hiding from all those owls because the owls are looking for them. So the owl population is growing up because they're eating all those zillions of squirrels that were there. And they're laying their little owl eggs. And the squirrel population is dropping off because they're getting eaten. So all of a sudden we reach a really low point of squirrels. They're just getting eaten up. Well, then the owls can't find any prey anymore. They're like, all those squirrels are gone. Like, we're hungry. And so the owl population starts to die off. And when there's less predators, there can be more prey. And so these two lines are always going to be offset with each other. And the reason they're going to rise and fall has to do with the other population. How many is there in the other? If there's lots of predators, the prey is going to go down. If there's lots of prey, the predator is going to go up. Okay, so you might see this graph and they might ask you like kind of some things that could happen. Like, for example, what would happen if this is squirrels and owls and all of a sudden we add wolves into there? What's going to happen to these lines? Spoiler alert, they're both going to go down. But both of these populations are going to decrease if we add a new predator. Why? Why is the owl population going down? Do wolves eat owls? No. The wolves are eating the squirrels. So that means there's less squirrels. And there's less squirrels for the owls to eat. So their population will go down too. So adding in new creatures or taking away other creatures is going to affect everyone. So yeah, again, like I said the other time, this is why we really need to protect and look out for biodiversity, and why we need to make sure that we don't just add invasive species, why we don't just let animals go out into the wild and whatever, why we don't deforest an area so that way they lose their habitats. Because when we change one thing in the environment, it's going to offset a bunch of other things. It's this very delicate balance. I say it's delicate, but I almost want to change that, because it's not delicate. It's very resilient. It means it can come back. So if we try to fix things, it can come back. Nature can repair. But if we get past this kind of tipping point, like you're at the top of the roller coaster and you kind of go over the edge, well, you might not be able to snap back, or it might take an extremely long time for that to happen. So yeah, that's my let's try not to wreck the environment too much speech, at least for today. All right, we're not going to talk about us. We're boring, at least for today. We'll get to that another day. But anyway, I hope that helps you understand population growth and carrying capacity and limiting factors a little bit more. And I'll see you later. Bye.